As the F1 world digests Red Bull breaking the cost cap in 2021, speculation is rife. This is Formula 1. The entire point of the sport is to push the rules to breaking point. That's how teams win. That's how it's worked for its entire history. Red Bull got caught pushing too far, and a lot of people think they know how. Horner predicted someone would break the cap 2 years ago, so has had plenty of time to come up with a way around it. And today, we're going to tell you how they did. Let's get started. The FIA's announcement that Red Bull was guilty of busting Formula 1's cost cap limit last year has confirmed the worst fears of its main rivals and fans of the sport. Toto Wolff had been pushing the narrative that there'd been a big breach for a few weeks before the FIA confirmed many people's suspicions. For fans of Lewis Hamilton and Mercedes, this was just another piece of evidence that they were cheated in 2021. They are obviously calling for the harshest punishment possible. If you make the mistake of going on Twitter for Formula 1 news, then you might think that Red Bull had committed war crimes, not made a minor overspend of the 2021 cost cap. While F1 Twitter might be more toxic than a supervillain's acid vat, what is crystal clear is that labeling Red Bull's overspend as minor is a huge mistake. To be classified as a minor offense rather than a material one, teams must have overspent by less than 5% of the allowance. So, with last year's cost cap being roughly $145 million, that could still be up to $7.25 million. Lewis Hamilton has made reference to just $500,000 more development money being unlocked for Mercedes last year as enough to allow it to bring a new floor design, which would have lifted the pace of the car to potentially change the outcome of the title chase. As his team boss Toto Wolff said at the Singapore Grand Prix, "If it is a so-called minor breach, I think the word is probably not correct. If you're spending $5 million more, you're still in the minor breach. It still has a big impact on the championship." Red Bull's rivals are obviously going to make this out to seem like they made the most of the $7.25 million available to them for a minor overspend. In reality, they could have spent just $7.25, and it would still be a minor overspend. There has been no confirmation from the FIA or Red Bull about the scale of the breach, but there have been plenty of suggestions it's somewhere between $1 million and $2 million. That may seem like quite a small amount of money in the grand scheme of things, but when it comes to development budgets, extra spending like that ultimately makes a big difference. Even if they have overspent by just $1 or $2 million, that money has to have been spent somewhere, and a few stories have been gaining traction in the media. Let's break down the current favourites for how Red Bull spent over the budget cap in 2021. There are reports that the FIA has confirmed where Red Bull have overspent, but we can't find the original source for this FIA statement. Those reports state that the FIA has said that the team's catering budget accounts for almost all the breach. Daily free lunches for the team's 1,000 staff members at the company's Milton Keynes headquarters won't have been cheap. In addition to the free lunches, there was also a championship celebration party that needed paying for. How much money could that actually account for, though? This is going to take some guesswork because we can't know how many staff members work at Red Bull's factory on a daily basis, or how good the lunches were. Having worked in the hospitality industry in the past, though, we can make some educated guesses at the costs. Most UK companies give 4 weeks leave a year, so let's say that Red Bull fed 1,000 members of staff a day for 48 weeks of the year. A canteen that big buys ingredients in bulk at a reduced rate and could easily have got cost down to a few dollars a meal. Red Bull probably provides a decent lunch for their staff, so let's call it $7.50 a meal. That would be $360,000 over the year, as a very conservative estimate with some educated guesswork. If Red Bull thought those costs would be excluded, but the FIA decided they weren't, then that would make a big difference to their budget report. That championship celebration party could easily have cost into the hundreds of thousands as well, with event hire, staff hire, food and drinks all included. It pretty quickly becomes apparent that just a disagreement or two with the FIA over what is included and what isn't can add up. If it were just those catering costs that Red Bull and the FIA disagreed on, then that would already be $500,000, maybe even more. But it isn't just catering costs that are being reported as the cause of the cost cap breach. According to the Dutch newspaper De Telegraaf, Red Bull did not spend too much on the development of the car. Mistakes were made with regard to other matters, such as catering and absenteeism due to illness. The working theory for these claims is that Red Bull thought that the cost of sick leave for employees was excluded, but the FIA actually included it. we went digging into the cost cap regulations, which are readily available for anyone to read. My advice, don't bother reading it unless you're looking for a cure for insomnia. On our way through them though, we did notice that the FIA's own regulations exclude any sick leave from the cost cap. They also exclude the wages of anyone who is having to cover the sick member of staff. This includes things like maternity and paternity leave as well. The rules do say that the F1 team demonstrates to the reasonable satisfaction of the cost cap administration that that is how the money is spent. So maybe the FIA aren't convinced that Red Bull actually had ill members of staff. Seems unlikely to us. Perhaps the reports of sick leave being to blame aren't actually all that true then. The final theory we've seen circulating is that Red Bull tried to get some of their higher paid staff out of the cost cap by changing how they're classified in the business payroll. The top 3 earners of each team are excluded from the cap. In Red Bull's case, that would be Christian Horner, Adrian Newey, and maybe Pierre Wash or Helmut Marko. Some reports are stating that Adrian Newey may be paid as an external consultant though, not a full-time employee, and as the brains behind Red Bull's car, he'll be paid a lot. Red Bull may have thought that the costs he bills to them for his services might not be included in the cap because he's a consultant, not a salaried employee. The FIA might have included these costs though, which would then put Red Bull over the cap. It seems very unlikely that the FIA would allow teams to use consulting services outside of the cost cap though. A team could just put every person working on the car as a consultant instead of an employee and avoid spending any money on wages whatsoever. They could save millions on labour and spend it on development instead. Seems pretty unlikely if you ask us. The one thing that these reported reasons have in common though is that all of them are based on the theory that the FIA has included things that Red Bull thought weren't included. That's where the mismatch will lie, not in some complex attempt at moving costs outside the cap through clever accounting trickery. Like we said earlier, the news that they've overspent has sent F1 fans and media into overdrive, trying to predict what the punishment will be. Most reasonable discussions have been about a fine and a reduction in cost cap equal to the overspend. ESPN's Nate Saunders said in a recent interview, "I've been told that the chance of Verstappen losing his championship is almost nil." Nate is a pretty reliable source when it comes to F1 news, but he isn't the only source. There is one company that's known for their reliability and trustworthiness that's already declaring Hamilton as the 2021 world champion. That company is none other than the old Haas sponsor Rich Energy. When we said they were known for their reliability and trustworthiness, we meant they're known for being neither of those things. An easy decision for the FIA now, reads the tweet. It is imperative that the integrity of the great sport of Formula 1 is maintained. Congratulations Lewis Hamilton and Mercedes-AMG on a well-deserved world title in 2021. The message was posted along with a video of F1 chief Ross Brawn, who, back in 2019, said, "If you fraudulently breach the financial regulations, you will be losing your championship." Remember how we said earlier that Formula 1 Twitter is a place to avoid if you're after Formula 1 news? Go read the replies to that tweet and you'll understand why. Until the FIA releases an official statement on what has happened and how they'll be punished, it's impossible to know the exact details of what has happened. Some of the claims circulating at the moment may be true. Then again, it might be something completely different that has caught Red Bull out. We just don't know. What do you think it is that's caught Red Bull out? And what is your preferred punishment for the team? Let us know down below in the comments, and until next time, drive safe and bye for now.